The evil ultra-rich wants to make us stupid. Well, actually fat and stupid. Decisions have been made to lower our IQ, really. Watch this. Dangerous truth.
One single scientist caused the deaths of millions of people. Only that, they decreased the average intelligence of people all around the world, increased crime rates, and caused two completely separate environmental disasters that we are still dealing with today.
Yes, shocking, dangerous truth. Decisions made for greed, profit, avarice, over the benefit of human beings. And when we started to get our cars, everybody enjoyed the freedom, but there was knocking in the car. There was trouble with the gas, and it made a knocking sound inside the engine.
Hear that? Up, 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 up. Hear that? That? Okay.
The reason fancy cars demand high-octane fuel is to prevent knocking in their high-compression, high-performance engines.
They discovered plant-based ethanol.
It was an interesting exception. It did stop the knocking, but you needed a lot of it, about 10% of the fuel mixture for it to be effective.
But you see, ethanol came from plants, and plant fuel was frowned on by big oil. They didn't like the idea of plant fuel. They didn't like the idea of the diesel engine. Growing plants would clean CO2 from the air, and big oil didn't like that.
He and Kettering patented the process for making tetraethyl lead, and they called their new additive ethyl, perhaps so it might be confused with another common additive, ethyl alcohol. They made no mention of lead.
Evil big oil chose to use the lead rather than plant ethanol because of money and also of fear of plants, of living things.
Lead is dangerous even in small doses. It mimics calcium in our bodies, so there's no efficient way to get rid of it. And like calcium, lead can be stored in bones for years, meaning it can continue to poison the body long after the initial exposure.
Yes, it's a dangerous truth, but lead was added to the gasoline, and it affected the entire world, making the entire world stupid, more stupid, robbing into it.
The organ most sensitive to lead is the brain. Lead breaks down the myelin sheath around axons and prevents the release of neurotransmitters.
Early symptoms of lead poisoning: headaches, irritability, reduced sensations, aggressive behavior, difficulty sleeping, reduced IQ, kidney damage, hearing damage, loss of developmental skills. It affected the entire world, and maybe now you understand your children better. Lead takes away their intellect.
That's why common symptoms of lead poisoning are headaches, memory loss, and tingling in the hands and feet. And children are particularly susceptible. Lead exposure can cause permanent learning disorders and behavioral problems. And the dangers of lead had been known for hundreds of years.
Perhaps you've noticed people becoming more fat, more stupid. And what about the sad case of Hungary? You see, paprika is the #1 business in Hungary. Paprika is powderized and sold by weight, by the pound. In the early 90s, the paprika makers tripled their profit because they put lead oxide, they put lead into the paprika to increase their profit, making the people who bought the paprika all over the world, and especially in Hungary, more stupid. Lead poisoning really affected people. Hungarian IQ.
Brussels is applying unprecedented pressure on Hungary. They could withhold billions of dollars over the country's rule of law issues, along with an anti-LGBTQ law. Back in June, the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban signed legislation that bans anyone under 18 from being shown content that encourages, and I have the sex change or homosexuality.
Public concern about lead exposure had continued to grow. But President of Standard Oil Frank Howard pushed back, saying, "We do not feel justified in giving up what has come to the industry like a gift from heaven on the possibility that a hazard may be involved in it."
Big oil reigned supreme, and when Rudolf Diesel made an engine that would run on vegetable oil, Something had to be done to Rudolph.
Throw him over the side.
What happened was, big oil executives threw him off a boat one night. He was thrown into the ocean. You see,
In aggregate, lead caused a loss of more than 800 million IQ points. The world is less intelligent today because of leaded gasoline.
undeniably, without doubt, all the research shows that we are less smart because of lead. But people around the world are a little dumber. In fact, some are a lot.
20th century Americans had 1,000 times more lead in their bones than their ancestors. Studies of baby teeth revealed that even lead exposure well below the level considered safe resulted in delayed learning, decreased IQ, and increased behavioral problems.
When we look at children's blood levels of lead and look at crime, and then we do a little jog into the history, into the future, what we're going to see is almost a perfect correlation. That lead increases crime all over the world. It's true. You see, lead is poison. Smoking is poison. These things are all improved. That evil, big sugar, evil, ultra-rich, are all trying to create problems. And they want us to be stupid so they can sell their items, so they can sell us things. You see, this type of sugar creates problems. And where did sugar really come from? Where's the history? We're going to find that Alexander the Great saw sugar. And when he saw this, this is where sugar will now explode all over the world. And could it be that UFO aliens were planting it? Expands from this spot where they saw UFOs. Sugar expands to take over the world. Next we found corn. We saw the story about Christopher Columbus and all the UFOs that he saw, and then here we find corn, and corn spreads out around the world. Low nutrients, high carbohydrate, making people fat, reducing hormones. And then what about the potato? You see, because down in Peru, where there's massive evidence of UFOs, etc., we're going to find that potato is discovered, and lo and behold, the potato glycemic foods. And we see that the effects of the potato. These high glycemic foods that supply little in nutrition, and yet they spark the blood sugar into a cycle of addiction, making you want more and more food. And then somebody comes along and makes white bread, white sugar and white bread. Is it possible an alien culture wants us fat and stupid?
Don't get on that ship! The rest of the book, To Serve Man, it's a cookbook.
Yeah, a cookbook, how to prepare man to be served. Oh, that was pretty good, but
This will give these humans the perfect flavor.
We wouldn't want you to lose weight.
It's because sooner or later, will all of us be on the menu.
Or more simply stated, the evolution of man. The cycle of going from dust to dessert.
It's a cookbook! It's a cookbook!
And worse than sugar and worse than lead is the synthetic sweeteners. These chemicals make you fat, stupid, lazy, and crazy. They affect the bowel flora. It's horrendous.
Benjamin Franklin remarked that lead had been used for far too long, considering its known toxicity. You will observe with concern how long a useful truth may be known and exist before it is generally received and practiced on.
Yes, it's amazing, but these dangerous truths, they don't get addressed, you see, because profit is so important. In fact, it isn't just intellect, but this lead is killing people. The evil ultra-rich, the sugar, etc., these things are killing people, millions of people every year. We have to do something about this.
Leaded gas is still used, by the way, in piston-driven airplane engines. That's now the largest source of lead emissions into the air in the US.
There are many proven, valid plant airplane fuels that can be used. But big oil don't want that. Big oil wants to drill. All the people who own refineries, pipelines, and tankers don't want plant fuel.
Hi, I'm Ted Thrasher from the ICAO Environment Branch. I'm going to talk about one of the most exciting and promising opportunities for reducing aviation's greenhouse gas emissions while improving local air quality, the use of sustainable alternative fuels. Let's start by talking about drop-in alternative fuels. A drop-in alternative fuel is a substitute for conventional jet fuel that is completely interchangeable and compatible with conventional jet fuel. In other words, from the pipeline to the airplane, no one can tell the difference. Of course, there is a difference. The difference is that sustainable alternative fuels are produced from renewable sources. This may be plants that you may have never heard of before, or even algae. Although the airplane can't tell the difference between the two jet fuels, the environment can. Sustainable alternative fuels offer significant local air quality benefits. And when using biomass to produce jet fuel, the plant absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere while it is growing. This is something that a fossil fuel simply can't do. When you look at the entire life cycle, the net emissions can be much lower. Under optimal conditions, 80% lower, which is why environmentally, alternative fuels are attractive. A recent report that was commissioned to inform the British government showed that global demand for aviation jet fuel could be entirely met using biofuels in 30 to 40 years, with a substantial portion of the demand being met much earlier. Legislation and targets being set by states and regions are helping to ensure that these future predictions are realized. Let me give you an example of what this implies. If we were to look at a scenario 25 years from now, where half of the international jet fuel demand is met with a fuel that has 50% lower life cycle emissions than conventional jet fuel, that would mean a net reduction of nearly 300 million tons of CO2. So what does ICAO have to do with alternative fuels? Well, we don't produce fuel. You'll never see an aircraft being fueled from an ICAO truck. We don't write the specifications for fuels either. There are other international organizations responsible for that, namely ASTM International and the UK's Defence Standardization, or DSTAN. But as the United Nations Specialized Agency for International Civil Aviation, we bring states and stakeholders together. We are a facilitator. We provide the forum for outreach and information exchange about current initiatives worldwide in the form of workshops and our website. We support international collaboration to standardize definitions and bring the primary stakeholders together to discuss cross-cutting topics. We synthesize the results being presented around the world to facilitate a broader view. ICAO's role is to facilitate the development and deployment of sustainable alternative fuels for aviation globally. So what have we done lately? A lot. 3 years ago, the use of alternative fuels globally was just an idea. Since then, we've seen consortia form that involve all segments of the fuel supply chain, from the growers to the consumers. We've held a workshop and a conference and have seen the awareness on the topic go from just a few states to the entire world. The ICAO conference that was hosted by Brazilian authorities took decisions ranging from standardized definitions to the endorsement of the industry qualification and certification process, all of which were important steps to further develop and deploy sustainable alternative fuels for aviation. The conference also created the Global Framework for Aviation Alternative Fuels, where we pulled together initiatives from around the world. There are now more than 40 initiatives currently underway in every region of the world, making the development and deployment of alternative fuels for aviation a truly global effort. We are receiving updates for the Global Framework almost daily, with news of new partnerships being formed, new technologies being investigated, and more flights being operated on fuels derived using new processes. Over the past 2 years, there have been more than 10 test flights which supported the first new jet fuel certification in 20 years. ASTM D7566, the standard specification for aviation turbine fuel containing synthesized hydrocarbons. This is a landmark specification that not only makes it permissible to produce jet fuel using the Fischer-Tropsch process today, but the specification is structured to accommodate other future types of alternative fuels produced using other processes as they are developed. These new processes for developing jet fuel can be added to ASTM D7566 in annexes after they are qualified. The rate at which new initiatives are being launched has increased rapidly over the past 3 years, and there are annexes to ASTM D7566 currently in the qualification phase. What was just on the drawing board and in the test phase 3 years ago is now ready to be used in commercial aviation. It is a proven technology, and the work to improve it further is advancing at an amazing pace. This underscores how the aviation industry is always ready and able to adopt emerging technologies. The challenge is no longer to show whether or not alternative fuels will work. They do. The challenge is to have enough of it available to make a real impact. Financial assistance and incentives are needed to accelerate the development and deployment. Regulatory frameworks are needed to ensure availability. Sustainable alternative fuels are a win-win solution for aviation on many fronts. Local air quality and climate benefits? Check. Stabilize supply and fuel prices? Check. Can be grown in all regions of the world, not just historic oil-producing areas, thereby creating new markets and employment? You bet. And they don't require any change to the existing infrastructure to deploy? That's pretty amazing. With sustainable alternative fuels, aviation's future is indeed very green. It is for these reasons that alternative fuels are a key measure that can be used to address aviation's contribution to climate change.
So as you can see, there is an evil ultra-rich that want to make us fat and stupid. And we all kind of line up and let it happen. We don't seem to do anything. We'll watch part 3.
You will observe with concern how long a useful truth may be known and exist before it is generally received and practiced on.